Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, April 24th, 2021. And our top story this week, we'll take a look at the Pan-European Personal Pension, or PEP. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Ziga Vizintin. He's advisor to the management board at Polkoganiska Druzhba A Pension. Ziga, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important, just before we kind of jump into the European version of PEP, and we'll get to that in a second. I really think it's important for those of us, no matter what country we live in, to hear what's going on in other countries as it relates to retirement, whether it's from the policy perspective, the actual plan design perspective, anything else. I think it's going to make better retirement systems all over the place. So it's a privilege to have you kind of weigh in here, and some of the other folks around the world as well. So let's start off with, what is the European PEP? And by PEP, I mean PEPP, not a pooled employer plan. What's a PEP?
Well, PEP is a very new thing. Also, most people in Europe don't know it well. It has been in the works for like 7 years now. It basically is a pan-European personal pension product. So we are talking here about a personal individual pension product that will be pan-European. Because now in Europe, Europe is made of 28, now 27 countries, and each country has its own products for retirement saving. And they are very different. In some countries, you have very similar offer like in the States. In some, it's totally different. In like France, most people save for retirement in insurance products. In UK, they did in pension funds similar to US. So it's a really diverse field. So now the European Union recognized this, I would say, problem, and started working 7 or 8 years ago on a product that would be the same for all EU citizens. So everybody from every country could save in it, and the rules would be the same. So basically, this is the European version of the PIP, we could say. So personal individual retirement plan, and the same rules will be for all European countries. Europe, Germany, Slovenia, whatever.
Yeah, and so, just to kind of, I guess in comparison here in the States, if you go from one employer to another, we have the 401k, the 403b, and the governmental 457b. They're different code sections, but they have similarities. And so when you go from one employer to another, you can effectively roll or bring in that old plan from your previous employer into the new plan. It sounds like this allows, people probably in Europe may travel between countries to do jobs, right? They may be gig workers, they may be consultants, what have you. They're traveling between countries. It's probably important to have this regulation or this product in place so that people can have uniformity when moving between employers.
True. This has been in the last years a big issue because, yes, as you said, mobility of workers. This is one of the key things that the European Union is all about: free mobility of workers. And basically, retirement plans aren't mobile yet. So basically, if I work now in Slovenia and I go to Germany, my pension savings stay here in the Slovene pension fund and can't be transferred to the German ones. So if I change, let's say, 5 countries, I have 5 jobs in 5 countries, when I will retire, I will have currently 5 additional pensions, let's say 5 annuities, 5 small ones. And it's a real problem because you need to follow how your plan is doing. It could do worse, and it's in practice for mobile workers, it really doesn't work as it should.
Yeah, and so the first PEP is set to take off, I think you said March of 2022. Let me ask you, from the employer's perspective, how are people, employers, let's say where you are in Slovenia, but maybe in other parts of Europe, reacting to this? Is this a good thing? Is it seen, I would assume it is, but is it being received positively? Let me put it that way.
Yeah, generally it's received positively, but I have to say, I can speak only from my experiences, most people currently aren't aware of it. Even a lot of people in the retirement saving industry aren't aware of it. because it's still a really new thing. Just last month, the last technical standards were issued. So now basically everybody has a year to prepare for actual launches of the first products, which will be in the next year. And I have to stress again, this is only an individual saving plan. So it's not like a 401k. So basically employers now are mostly welcome with it, but this won't, collective plans won't fall under this. So this, everybody now is saying, okay, this is a good idea, but it's an individual product. What would be the real, I would say, game changer would be that the next step would be to enable corporate, collective, pan-European pension plans. And this is where I think the big companies, the multinational companies that are present in Europe, they would get excited about this product. Because now a multinational company in Europe needs to have 27 pension plans in different countries with different rules. You can't put them together. You don't have any economy of scale. So of course, this is not optimal. And I think the employers would get involved in the second part, but now it will be only individual.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, at the end of the day, the way to reduce fees is through uniformity of administration, right? So if you have different sets of plan rules, say you're an international company, you have not only customers, but you have employees in all these different countries. You've got to have all these different sets of rules. I mean, good luck having a benefits department being able to administer all that, much less partnering with a professional company to administer the plan on your behalf. So having that uniformity, I think, would help ultimately bring down the cost. Is that your thought as well?
Absolutely. An HR executive once shared with me his Excel sheet when he has all pension plans that they have in Europe. It's a nightmare to manage because you have so many small exceptions. In, let's say, small country like Slovenia, you have a little exception. In Germany, you have another one. And to manage all of this, the benefits department or an outside provider. And you also know the pension legislation is alive. It constantly changes, you know. So to follow all these rules is a nightmare, takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of money. And also the assets can't be pulled together. You know, we need to manage one part here, the other one there. And it's a real nightmare. And also to explain to the workers what are the rules. And somebody will say, okay, now I work in Germany. And they say, oh, now it's totally different than you had in France, you know. So yes, it's for sure for multinational companies, it's far from optimal. And I know this would be a real benefit to them.
Yeah, and I got to think the compliance costs, you mentioned the different sets of rules. I mean, right there, you've got to have a compliance department that understands the laws and when the laws change. I mean, I can just tell you, going through, we have federal law here, but there are also state laws, maybe as it relates to cybersecurity or other components, other taxation components. That's a lot to manage. Ziga, in terms of, you mentioned that not a lot of organizations are aware of this first PEP. How do you educate? How do you get people to know about this? Is it coming on programs like this? Is it podcasts? How do we increase awareness? Because at the end of the day, the goal is pretty simple. You want people to be financially secure so that they can be independent. That's better for themselves, for their family, also for their country, their society. How do we get the word out about some of these programs?
True. I think in the next year when it will actually launch, there will be, of course, increased interest, increased publicity. Now it's more on a technical level. So mostly people like me are following it. But I think media will pick up on it. General public will pick up on it. One advantage, it will be fully digital also. And it's also now in the technical standards. So I think it will also be interesting for the younger generations. You have some providers that will launch it on a totally digital platforms. So, one thing I also think will be really important, you have some startups that are gonna bring in some innovative products under the PEP legal umbrella. So I think this will bring in new interest because you have some companies that are planning to do digital tontines. You've got different companies that are trying to pair it with credit cards and have automatic saving with consumption. So I think this kind of innovative ideas will catch people's attention and they will see, okay, what's that all about? And then somebody will tell them, now you can save from any country in the EU and it's and you can do it online. So I think this will be especially probably for the younger ones, the younger workers, the mobile workers, the self-employed, which are now underserved by the current pension industry, I can say, and products. I think this will catch their attention, and also then the public.
Yeah, I guess the last question here, and I agree with you on that, and I guess the last question is around, I think obviously this is where the European Union, I think, has recognized this is important for saving for retirement, given I think we had a guest on earlier in the week. I know we had a guest on earlier this week, Abraham Hernandez, talking about some of the challenges we're seeing around the globe with pensions. It shows that governments, policymakers are listening, the regulatory apparatus is listening and working to make appropriate changes. Anything else that you see coming down the pike in the next year or so that people should be aware of?
I think the next step really here would be occupational pan-European pension plans, and also the idea of spreading auto-enrollment, similar like it was UK, and also how you have in America with some state-facilitated retirement plans. I think this is the next big idea, how to get, let's say, the other half of employees who are currently not saving, how to get them as effortlessly as possible to save, with still giving them some options. I think this is really the next big step we all need to take.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed, and lots of work to be done. And I think awareness, making people aware that these products exist, but also that they should be saving, that's a really important part of this as well. And you can build the best product if you don't have people using it. Why build it? Ziga Vizintin, it is an absolute pleasure to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program. And we look forward, of course, to having you back soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks, Ziga. And when we come back, we'll take a look at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. On Monday, I sat down with JP Morgan Asset Management's Catherine Roy to discuss how to manage lower than expected returns in retirement. Let's take a look.
Yeah, so we just published our 9th guide, which is really exciting. But as a part of that publication, we always take a look at our best thinking as a firm with our long-term capital market assumptions to try to give guidance around what is a relevant or probably a realistic pre-retirement rate of return. And as we did that this year, it was our 25th year of publishing those long-term capital market assumptions, we really were challenged in terms of the returns we can expect over the next 10 to 15 years or so. So we reduced our pre-retirement rate of return from 6%, where it had been for the last probably 3 or 4 years, down by just a 0.25% to 5.75%. And that's really the return we would expect a 25 to 65-year-old over a very long period of time to be able to achieve. And what's interesting, whenever we do that within the guide, we always look at our checkpoint chart, which is a multiplier chart that's intended to help people based on their age understand relative to their household income, how much should they have today to be on track to afford their retirement. And when we change the rate of return, it really doesn't impact younger people in that chart, so a 20 to 45-year-old or so. And that's really because savings is the biggest contributor to how their wealth is growing. But once your wealth gets to be more significant, that rate of return reduction can have a pretty significant effect. So, this kind of challenged long-term returns over the next 10 to 15 years really impacts people closest to retirement when they have the most wealth at risk, or the most wealth that really needs that return to be able to successfully get them across that finish line. And so when we look at the average participant, we see that means, just that 0.25% change for a 65-year-old. If that average participant we see, leaving the workforce at about $80,000 of income, that's a $60,000 difference in terms of what that 65-year-old needs. And so, we want to make sure that people are aware of that when their wealth is greatest, obviously they need strategies to protect that wealth as well as grow it, but also how important it is to save in those last years, ramping up to retirement as well. Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. When I started at JP Morgan 10 years ago, our capital market assumption would support that 8% return, and gradually it's come down. Now we would say that a 60-40 portfolio is more like a 4.2% return, which is a drastic reduction. And so what it means for people in retirement is, number one, they need to invest. And so when we look at the 4% rule, the infamous 4% rule, and we look at what if someone just holds cash, which we know there's a lot of cash on the sidelines right now, we see that that's not successful. That level of lack of investment, right, is not going to support that level of spending. So you need to remain invested in retirement to be able to support that level of spending you're going to need, particularly because healthcare costs on Medicare we see growing at about a 6% rate. That's inflation plus the fact you buy more of it as you get older. So you need to have some growth in your portfolio. And what we see as a potential solution with our assumptions really is the importance of diversification. So when we compare a 40-60 simplistic portfolio that's invested in the ACWI as well as U.S. aggregate bonds, it barely makes the 4% rule successful at an 80% confidence level. But when you diversify within those asset classes, adding some high yield bonds, adding emerging market equities and debt in the equity side, the more diversification, slightly more risk, but that leaves about $200,000 left on that $1 million initial portfolio for that 4% rule, which is a significant cushion above kind of this risk of potentially running out of money. So diversification we really see as being very important, not just to retirement, but through retirement. I think diversification is always something we've believed in, and so we see it only becoming that much more important, going forward. And so I would say that it's important from individuals who are in target date funds to be able to benefit from that higher level of diversification. The question I think we raise is, are the people who could benefit from that the most actually in the target date fund? Because when you look at target date fund adoption in plans, you see a lot of do-it-yourselfers in the 50-plus segment, and we see them carrying a significant amount of risk. And really, I would say they're barbell. They either have a significant amount of risk relative to any of our glide paths, or they have a significant amount of cash. And so both of those we really see as suboptimal. And so what we want to ask plan sponsors to think about, and advisors, is as you're looking at and choosing your default investment, like that target date fund, it's one thing to choose and make the right decision for your plan, but it's another to make sure that the people who will benefit from that decision the most are in it. So thinking about re-enrollment, particularly for those households that are closest to retirement, where this higher degree of diversification or the right level of risk is really important given the challenges that we might face over the next 10 to 15 years, re-enrollment would help reposition, that participant maybe on a better path than they're on their own. So I think we see, value in having some of those asset classes in plan. We have in our target date series a version that has direct real estate, and that's been really additive to its performance. But there's costs that comes with that, which obviously is a challenge in plan where fees are such an important consideration, and there's liquidity constraints that make that often a challenge to do within defined contribution plans. So I think for those two reasons, even though there's been some direction as to those types of asset classes being attractive, I think those challenges remain very real as plan sponsors and advisors think about this, as well as us as investors. So, but I do think on the private wealth side, clearly alternative asset classes is an area where, for the right type of wealth level, holding some in terms of percent of the portfolio of those types of asset classes is an additional asset class that leads to that greater diversification, which we would say would also produce a better outcome for that type of client.
And on Friday, I sat down with author and columnist Carrie Hannon to discuss when you should stop saving for retirement. Let's take a look.
It's tricky because it used to be, you could sort of suss out what might be the appropriate time. But my husband and I, it really made us start thinking about it this year because, he's over 65 and we thought, well, what is the right time? But here's the thing. Yes, you do have to have if you're in the IRAs or those sort of retirement tax deferred ones, there's going to be a time where you have to start pulling that money out. It's been pushed back a bit, certainly to 72, I think now. But here's what you need to remember is longevity. We're living longer, presumably healthier lives. So you need to be thinking, I'm planning to live to maybe 100. So why not keep putting money in? You could have at 60, another 20 years, that you might be thinking of at least trying to put some aside, or at least 10 years or more that you need to put something aside for your retirement accounts, because you defer the taxes, you allow it to continue to compound, and it's a really nice vehicle. So just think longer term these days. Jeff, here's the thing. Women outlive longer than men in general. I mean, this is changing a little bit, but women tend to have been out of the workforce. They've earned less money. Over time, they have accumulated, many women, less money than their male counterparts. So you have to be extra aggressive about saving for retirement. And as we get older, you need to continue, that you can do the bump up extra here, but it's really buckle down because we have no idea what our medical costs might be as we age. There's all kinds of crystal balling we can't do. But for women in particular, a lot of the family finances often women tend to, if they're married, tend to marry male spouses who would be older than them. It just has way. So a lot of the finances often go to paying that spouse's medical bills. So you're really left in a lurch. So it's really important. So many women become widows and near the poverty line. And Cindy Hansel at Wiser is a wonderful source on that. I know you've talked to her before. It's really imperative that women really pay attention. Yeah, I mean, money is power, money is control, money is confidence. And so these are things, women, we can do this. It's not saying you love anyone any less if you're in a partnership. It's just simply, I'm taking care of me, and I know I may have longevity, and I'm going to, take control of what I can. I don't see it the way I want to see it. I think younger women are somewhat better than women in my age cohort over 50. But it is starting to change. But there is still this sort of Scarlett O'Hara mentality. I'll think about it tomorrow. Talking about money is taboo. All these sorts of cultural, deep-seated feelings about money that cause a lot of conflict for women. And they still will say things like, oh, it bores me, or I'm not good at math. And come on, we know better than that. It's simply they're not comfortable with the language. And that's why I think you and I have talked about the importance of really teaching personal finance at younger ages in the schools and so forth.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, and of course, our website. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the news and information this week in retirement market technology. Well, you know. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.